Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of our biennial coffee chat. This morning, we are talking about our America's COVID-19 Memorial. This project was launched in March, and the idea being that it's an opportunity to acknowledge the unique challenges the Western Hemisphere has faced and create opportunities for healing through art. I want to also acknowledge that this project is ongoing. We are inviting the public to submit memorial artworks on our website to be part of an online gallery that is growing and will be launched this summer. Anyone is welcome to submit their memorial artworks, and those artworks will be up on our website and open to the possibility of award prizes of up to $5,000. So please, once this conversation's over or whenever you have a chance, go to our website and check out how you can submit your memorial drawing. I would like to continue by inviting our first speaker. We're really excited to announce that we have a live performance by Aisha Fukushima, who's a performance lecturer, justice strategist, singer, songwriter, and founder of Raptivism. And I have the honor of welcoming her to this conversation for a performance. So without further ado, I would like to welcome Aisha. Thank you so much, and I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Robin. Thank you again to all of the organizers, to all of the speakers today. I'm so excited for this conversation. And thank you to you all for tuning in. I'm excited to be here together. A couple of traditions that I bring with me on the virtual road and the road when I'm traveling in person beyond COVID times is just to acknowledge the indigenous land that we live, that we are reliant upon, the history, the present of that land. Here, as I sit in Philadelphia, I'm on occupied Lenape territory. I invite you through whichever platform you're streaming in from to perhaps name the indigenous land that you live, that you rely upon, that you want to acknowledge today. Pop it into the chat, whatever feels right. We know that there are indigenous lands all the way from occupied Duwamish territory, my roots in Seattle, to thinking of Japan, the Ainu people, Ryukyu, in what's known by many as Okinawa. Secondly, an important tradition is just to take a few mindful deep breaths. So wherever you are, I hope that sounds okay to you all. I invite you to find a comfortable seat. If you're standing, great, whatever feels right for you. And just to take a few mindful breaths just to arrive here together. We're zooming around quite literally and figuratively. And I want to invite us to really get present for this conversation, this experience that we're entering today. So wherever you are, if it feels okay for you, I invite you to close your eyes. If that's too intense, I invite you to perhaps just softly gaze towards the floor, noticing anything that is holding you up. The ground, the floor, perhaps a chair. On your inhale, taking in that support. And on your exhale, letting go of any tension that you don't need in this moment. On your next round of inhale, I invite you to expand your belly and let it go. Exhale, letting go of something that is no longer serving you in this moment. I invite you to take a deep breath and relax your shoulders down your back if that feels accessible. And on your next inhale, perhaps relaxing those muscles in your face, the crown of your head, the space between the eyebrows, the jaw. Let's take a couple rounds of breath together, inhaling in. Exhale, letting go of something that is no longer serving you. Inhale in, taking in the love. Exhale. One more just like that. Deep inhale. And an even longer exhale. Thank you for taking those moments to get grounded. Perhaps you want to find some movement, stretch, you do you. So I was asked to make a quick comment before I jump into song this morning. And I was asked to talk a little bit about how COVID has impacted my work. Of course, we've seen and heard many artists feeling the cancellations, the changes during these times, especially when you do something like live music or public speaking like I do. But really, I saw that as a time of adaptation, an adaptation of how we connect with one another, an adaptation of how deeply we understand our interconnectedness. I wrote a poem called Butterfly, and in that poem, there's a line that says, "How can you divide the air?" And I think about the words of my mother. She often talks about how we share one breath all around the world. And this time of pandemic, this time of all the social injustices that are rooted in historical injustices, whether we're talking about anti-Asian hate crimes, to police brutality and Black Lives Matter, to fear around the vaccine, whether that's different kinds of conspiracy theories or that's fear rooted in Tuskegee experiments, that these things are kind of rooted in a really deep history of harm that also we're working every day to iterate in healing. So to answer that question of how my work has pivoted, it's just changed the ways in which we're looking to connect. I started doing meditations and offering different kinds of portals for people to drop into the present so we can more deeply connect and build solidarity around political, economic, social organizing that we need so deeply in this time. The song I want to present this morning, I think, speaks to exactly that. And I hope it resonates with you. It's called Pandemic. I made it with some harder hitting lyrics about the times, with the beat, which I composed to kind of help us settle into our parasympathetic nervous system, that rest and digest, and to give a break to the sympathetic nervous system, that part of us that might be triggered and feeling all of the things during these times. I hope that this resonates with you. And if you like it, please feel free to groove with it. Yes. Here we go. Da 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 da. Ooh, ha 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 ha, yeah. This pandemic is systemic. Shortfalls, winner takes all. We stand tall amidst it all. A war we never waged. Loved ones fall. Call your name, we rise again. Healthcare is a right. While we fight, hold on tight. Wish we may, wish we might. Move the world and see it turn. Watch the wildfires burn. Watch them burn. Watch them turn, yeah. Global pandemic, endemic, systemic. No equality, no quality of life, of life. Of life? Hey. Global pandemic, endemic, systemic. No quality, no equality of life, of life, of life. You say this killed Black and brown, and when will you talk about class in this story? The rest is allegory. Come together, unionize, see it through each other's eyes. No need to fight over supplies while workers save lives. They need protection too. What we gonna do? Organize our way through. And for those behind bars, we must fight hard. Global pandemic, endemic, systemic. No equality, no quality of life, of life, of life. Whoo! Global pandemic, endemic, systemic. No quality, no equality of life, of life, of life. We will not give up, we will not give in. You are beautiful, together we can win. We are one under the sun. Freedom flowers, watch them grow from the seeds that we have sown. Watch them grow, watch them flow, yeah. People power, all power to the people. People power, all power to the people, people. People power, all power to the people power, all power to the global pandemic, endemic, systemic. No equality, no quality of life, of life, of life. Whoo! Global pandemic, endemic, systemic. No quality, no equality of life, of life, of life. Thank you all so much. My name is Aisha Fukushima. You can find me at aishafukushima.com, at Aisha Fukushima on Instagram, Global Aisha on Facebook, and pretty much under that name on many platforms, Spotify, all the things. It's been such a pleasure to join you and give a warm round of applause, sign language round of applause to the speakers coming up. This is going to be a wonderful conversation. Stay tuned.
Thank you so much, Aisha. That was wonderful. I feel like it has many of the themes that we're about to talk about unity and healing and creating space for us to recognize our shared humanity. I especially like the line where you said, "From flowers, let them grow from the seeds we sow." I hope I got that right, but that for me really was a beautiful line. So thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Jeff, merci, arigato, spasiba, dankjewel, all the things, shesheni.
De nada. And I have the pleasure now of bringing on our panelists for this conversation. I'm so excited to welcome, we have Ariel Julia Brown, Maria Paz Gaviria, Jen de los Reyes, and Derek Velasquez joining us now. And I will turn it over to them.
Hello, good morning, everyone. That was an amazing performance. I think we should just all go, well, most of us are home, but it's a tough act to follow, but we're gonna do our best. My name is Jen de los Reyes. I am very honored to be here this morning moderating this discussion with this very esteemed panel. So when I woke up, I was thinking about how much language matters. And I was reflecting on the term land acknowledgement. And I really do feel like it is maybe not the right choice of words for this practice. You know, oftentimes when people do this, it feels just like an obligation and then an immediate moving on. And if we're being honest about histories, I think some people should really be delivering maybe a land apology. But, you know, today we are here to talk about memorials. And, you know, as I was reflecting on this sort of problem with the term land acknowledgement, I realized that I actually wanted to function more like a memorial. You know, that it should serve as a reminder, or even if we were to use the historic definition of the word, a statement of facts. So Buddhist monk, writer, and peace activist Thich Nhat Hanh practices a daily Buddhist tradition called touching the earth. It is something that you can do when you feel restless or you feel you lack some confidence in yourself, or when you're angry or unhappy. You can simply kneel down and touch the ground deeply with your hand and feel the security, the connections, the love, and the patience. I would like to try something with you all right now, which is my idea of maybe what a land memorial could be as a practice. We already had a very beautiful grounding exercise, so that kind of changes what I was going to do just a little bit, but let's flow with it. I want you to each find a comfortable position for your body in which you are able to connect with the ground, with a part of yourself that typically doesn't touch the earth. For many of us, this might be our hands. You could also rest your cheek on the ground. So if people want to take a moment to resituate themselves and have a part of their body touching the ground that normally does not. Once everyone gets resituated, we can begin. I'm going to say a series of statements. You can feel free to relax your breath and move with these statements in whatever way feels comfortable for you. I would suggest, as I say the words touching the earth, you might want to breathe in. And when I say a phrase that begins with grounding, it would be a nice moment to exhale. Everyone feel ready? Okay. Touching the earth, I feel the land that has held and witnessed pain, violence, loss, and suffering. Grounding out, I commit to understand and helping to heal those wounds. Touching the earth, I am connected to all other beings that also touch this shared earth. Grounding down, I know my well-being depends on their well-being. Touching the earth, I know it is able to offer all we need to sustain life. Grounded, I understand that relationship between the self and the land is reciprocal. Okay, thank you everyone for piloting that idea of a land memorial with me this morning. I'm now going to ask each panelist to introduce yourself and how you are personally defining memorial before we dive in to the deeper conversation.
I'll go first.
Thank you.
Right-ish. Yeah. I've as a visual artist and somebody who's part of my community in Denver, I've really been thinking about the tangibles and intangibles of memorials, because they are both. Sometimes it's just language, sometimes it's dance, sometimes it's gathering, and sometimes they take a physical form. And some of those gestures can be really simple, and some aren't necessarily meant to last. I think in the past, perhaps memorials, as we think of them, have been imagined as forever. But I think smaller and more daily gestures, especially during the pandemic, are becoming more important and can definitely begin to be thought of as memorial at this point. I think about personal memorials, I think about communal memorials. One's about life and death, or also one's about celebration. As we're kind of moving forward, and as a lot of our lives kind of flux in between technology, like again, being on online platforms and talking to each other, I also really thinking about the technological potential memorialization and how someone might be able to participate to a wider audience, but also it might be more short-lived. I think the speed of things is really changing perhaps the way we think about memorial, and maybe even in the COVID Memorial Project could even push that further. And technology is definitely something I want to think about and talk about a little bit as we're going through some of these questions in the panel, because there are accessibility issues. There are issues of, again, how long does something need to last? And I think about time and space and accessibility quite a bit when I've been thinking about memorials and what is their place in history. And I guess I say as we move forward, these might be shifting quite a bit.
Thank you for that.
Oh, I guess I didn't really introduce myself. So my name is Derek Velasquez. I'm an artist and exhibition organizer in Denver, Colorado.
Thank you, Derek. I'll go next. My name is Ariel Julia Brown. I am based on occupied Lenni Lenape land in Philadelphia. I am a performance curator with Monument Lab and director and founder of Black Spatial Relics. When I think about the definition or working definition of memorial, I think about memorial as a site of gathering with and for our dead. And I think about that. I think about site across material and across plane, honestly, material planes and astral planes. I think about site as a space upon which the living and the dead can both convene and meet each other. Especially in this moment where that sort of gathering has felt there's been a vacancy there, and I think about the body as site. I think about the movement and conjure traditions that my folks come from, with the body as a convening space as memorial. So I think a lot about the work of performance as a house for the work of memorial.
Thank you. And last but not least.
Well, first off, thank you to the Biennial of the Americas for having us here today. And it's a pleasure to be kind of sharing with Jen, Derek, and Ariel on this stage, and that very beautiful way in which we begun today. My name is Maria Paz Gaviria. I am based in Bogota, Colombia, where we run platforms for creativity and culture, and kind of specifically program for the arts. Memorials, for me, are places where we respond to loss, trauma, death, where we try to preserve a collective memory of society, which in a way shapes memories of generations to come. Kind of specifically in this time and in this context, there's a certain complexity of building memorial practice when there is still a shifting, when there is still a gap of what we are kind of reflecting upon. There is that risk or that complex questions about kind of which narratives, which versions of history whom and what we choose to remember, and kind of, since it's kind of impossible to capture that whole version of history, how do we create memorials that are more horizontal, that are more receptive, that kind of hold wider kind of versions of individuality to kind of create that collective practice. They are, and I just spoke about the risk and about their complexity. They are a beautiful opportunity. They're a beautiful opportunity to bring wider voices to bring to light kind of a wider practice.
Great, thank you. Now that we are all getting acquainted, let me acquaint you with the format I have for this morning. I love to be a taskmaster, which you are going to find out in this conversation. So I've broken things out into 2 rounds this morning. The first round, we're going to really look at format, look at the shape of a proposal, why a proposal, memorials, materials. So I'm going to be asking 4 questions in that first round, and I'm going to give our panelists 10 minutes to talk through those questions. For round 2, I'm going to mix up the format a little bit. There's also going to be 4 questions, but we're going to be reflecting on the themes of power and accountability, and I want to hold us all accountable to time. And it's going to be a little bit of a speed round. So each panelist is going to have 60 seconds to respond to each question. So we are actually going to hear from everyone in that last round. And thanks for being flexible with me, y'all, and playing along. I also really love to set up games. So you're probably seeing that happen live on the fly right now. Okay, so wow, 10:30, 10 minutes counting down. We're going to begin round 1. And the first thing I'm going to ask is, I think one of the most important questions and things that we need to acknowledge is that this pandemic has not affected people equally at all. It's really brought a lot of the inequality, disparity, suffering to the surface, stuff that has been there all along, but it is now in high relief. And so how can artists and artist-driven projects like the COVID Memorial Project address the disproportionate impact COVID-19 has had on BIPOC communities?
Yeah, I don't know. It's being a biennial of the Americas. So I'm in Denver, so I've technically seen and participated in all of these, whatever format they are, since 2011. And yeah, I guess one of the most interesting things and fruitful things about the kind of visual art part of it is that I get to meet a lot of artists and curators from South and Central America that I never really meet. And they come up to Denver, and a lot of times they're like, why am I in Denver? So just being able to make that exchange between, and of course we have people coming from North America across the United States into Denver as well, and they, collectively, as I'm kind of focused on my my experience of being in the United States, being able to see how the accessibility and, like you said, the disproportionate impact that, I mean, specifically in COVID, but a lot of other things have just been happening since the biennial has started. And, I think we're really seeing those differences reveal themselves. And I'm not entirely sure. I mean, we, as a biennial that's supposed to bring people from a lot of different places, I think there's a potential in this project, but it can't be. I'm finding it more difficult as technology speeds up and the expectations speed up, and it's actually becoming really difficult for any one thing to address anything. I mean, especially on the kind of level of a biennial. I mean, biennials were super hot thing, and maybe 10, 12, 15 years ago, they really kind of ramped up, and it was supposed to be a very global endeavor. And, I'm really happy that the Biennial of the Americas has kind of gone in the Western hemisphere between the Americas, North and South, as opposed to East and West, which a lot of, as far as like North America goes, handles, Europe and the US. But yeah, I don't know. It's really making me question, the purpose of biennials, and but I hope that this project again can do what it can and kind of reach out to as many different communities, countries, and people as possible. But again, it might be too much of a burden, especially via technology, to bring everything in one together, because even in the United States, we have different levels of accessibility to the internet, as this thing lives on the internet. Resources of just as cryptocurrency and this kind of technology is like piling in. That's revealing in the art world, a lot of visual art world and creative world, that's really revealing a lot of inequalities too. So yeah, I mean, I guess I'm just in a as a time of reflection during COVID, it's again revealing a lot of stuff, and I'm really questioning a lot of it.
I think the pandemic, kind of recent increased kind of racist violence, have laid bare sort of racial, economic, regional inequity, or disparities that have long existed. I think, for example, and kind of going back to what Derek was saying, kind of a format that kind of includes the global South in a way, that kind of includes the Americas as a whole. I also think of these disparities in, for example, access to vaccination, medical attention, where, if you kind of look at the map regionally, there's kind of a great divide to kind of access and medical attention. Kind of my hopes for an artist-driven process like the Biennial of the Americas. And I would say, I mean, and Robin began our conversation with kind of other mechanisms for kind of public participation through kind of submitting proposals. That there's kind of a great responsibility of how we adequately address kind of these divides, that we can think of highlighting different voices, and about kind of this possibility of kind of digital participation as a possibility of doing something different that supports these voices.
I want to join in and just say that in response to kind of the disproportionate impact on BIPOC folks of the pandemic, and how does that read? How does that come across in the work of repair, really, in this process? And I think one is like I think that we, even before the pandemic, we talk a lot about barriers to entry for everything for BIPOC people and BIPOC artists, and participating in all things, systemic barriers, and then that institutions hold, and also barriers that don't allow folks to be able to cross a threshold and submit a proposal. And I think that those are so deeply amplified. I think that having restricted space, all of us, but especially folks who are cash poor, BIPOC folks who have experienced, disproportionate amount of loss across all areas, including human life, that there's that grief is its own barrier to entry. And then also that on top of all the other barriers that we've been needing to work through. And so I wonder what is the imagining, what is the conversation with BIPOC artists in the field in a process like this that really gets to an understanding of what the incentives need to look like to be able to bring for an artist to be able to feel they can enter a process like that.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up, because it is actually something that I'm very passionate about and have worked with lots of different organizations to look at the systems they have in place and what are the barriers that are there and who actually can or cannot participate. What are they valuing? What does it mean to value those things? And oftentimes, so much of it is rooted in white supremacy. And, I think it's a real process of needing to decolonize application processes for it's not just the art world, right? The whole world needs to look at what are all of the ways we place these barriers or think of excellence and, think about entry based on these things, when really it's just exclusionary practices that are, couched in ideas of rigor or excellence, or real problems tip to tail. So, I think what we're going to do next, because I am looking at the time, and that was 10 minutes already, basically. So I want to move on to, because Aisha, you asked such a great question the other day when we all chatted a little bit beforehand. And so I want to put this question out to the panel before we move on to round two. And the question was, how does the medium or the media, could be virtual, memorial, digital, electronic, I'd add legislative, social practice, music, whatever the form the memorial takes and the tools used to craft whatever shape the memorial, materializes in. How are you all sort of framing that? How is it impacting it? How does the medium and the format and the tools impact the meaning of a memorial in this age for this purpose?
Thank you for asking that. Aisha. That was a beautiful question. And thank you for that translation and that working with that, Jen. I want to say, because I heard this podcast that blew my mind. It was beautiful. The Emergent Strategy podcast, and this interview with Alexis Pauline Gumbs. And she lifted a conversation that she had witnessed, she had experienced, she had with M. Jackie Alexander, wherein M. Jackie Alexander said that spirit answers as aesthetic. And I found that to be so deeply like moving, mind blowing. And Alexis was calling in the circle as an answer to aesthetic, as an answer of spirit in aesthetic, in our understanding of collectivity. And I wonder if I were to continue to work with that around Memorial, what is the aesthetic that spirit answers in that allows for folks on all sides of the veil, on all planes, that is in interspecies conversation, that is in conversation with land and air, that that feels like we can all be there and get around it and find ourselves in it and see ourselves in it. And knowing that that's a really large question, but that is, I feel like that's the level of challenge that we should be asking ourselves, rooting ourselves in this conversation.
I'd like to bring into this context a memorial that has completely transformed the kind of the process of memorializing, and it's Fragmentos, a space for art and memory that was created in 2017 here in the city of Bogota by the artist Doris Salcedo. And more than a monument, it's a counter monument, kind of a space for reflection on the Colombian armed conflict following our peace process. And she kind of inverted this idea of the monument, conceiving a space that seeks to create dialogues based on the ruptures that the conflict has created. It's a living artwork, more than a fixed place. It's you know, what she created, or her actual work here. And it's not her work that's kind of the most beautiful part. It's the construction of a floor made from the melted weapons belonging to the FARC guerrillas that were elaborated with the participation of women, victims of sexual violence during the armed conflict. So the whole support and the whole kind of shaping of this place has to do with kind of signifying conflict, re-signifying the medium, and it has to do a lot with kind of with the participation of the collective voices and to those who had kind of violence inflicted upon them. So kind of it disposes of kind of this vertical and fixed idea, and it becomes more of a physical, free, open public place that continues to have discussions and continues to have kind of artistic practice that continues to create kind of memory that's not fixed, that is kind of constantly reflective, and that specifically kind of functions through kind of open calls. That has kind of really shaped my idea of the media, the medium, and the possibility to have a space that is alive, that can contain and build upon kind of more kind of an expansive reflection, and kind of beyond also the idea of the armed conflict in Colombia, and that also has a possibility to build upon voices and conflicts kind of in the world.
Thank you so much for sharing that example of such a powerful counter monument. As we move on to round 2, which is about power and accountability, I want to call into the space another example of a memorial. And this one, as simple as a gesture that it was, really changed the game in many different ways. And I'm talking about Maya Lin's Vietnam War Memorial and the power of the simple gesture of saying names, of accounting for names, and, you know, seeing all of those names together and thinking about ways that we've been trying to do that, and just look at the sheer magnitude of loss that we've experienced. It feels almost impossible to really calculate. I'm thinking specifically about, you know, when the New York Times ran that cover that was all of the deaths, all of the names, thinking about the power of public demonstration and speaking out the names of the murdered, how important it is to say those names. So I just want to start us off with thinking about that as we move into this next phase around power and accountability. So this round is going to be tight, it's fast, and I am really going to rein it in here. I'm going to use my favorite timer sound, which is a duck. I am a friend to all birds. So as soon as you hear the duck, you really need to stop. And I'm not going to let the duck stop quacking. You're getting quacked off, okay? Because I want everyone to respond to these questions. So, okie dokie, 1 minute each. You're each going to respond. Let's start off. My bottom left, I've got Ariel. So you're going to begin. You're going to model this for us. The first question is, and this is really, what is the power and potential of an unrealized project? Because that is what the call-in is here, to share an unrealized project. So for you, what is the power of this gesture, the power of an unrealized project? 1 minute starts now.
I think we might have just lost.
How unfortunate!
All right, I'll jump in if she's glitched. Okay.
So I'm sorry if I'm breaking.
Okay.
Okay.
Good. I'm restarting your time. That was technology. Okay. Your 1 minute now begins.
Okay. I think about provocation and community. I think about spaces where that happens. I think about protest spaces. I think about church spaces. I think about, spaces where question is lifted, and everyone is asked to sit with and contend with that question. And the way that happens in theater, right? And the way that changes a person, that changes a community, that has the potential, in fact, to change the world. That is the potential of an unrealized idea. And I think that in being able to witness other folks' unrealized ideas, we get to learn and be expanded to.
Love that. Well, 2 seconds to spare too. Okay, how about Derek next? Your minute starts now.
Yeah, as an artist and a maker, there are almost unlimited unrealized projects that we have, and being open to unrealized projects or not finishing or not completing projects is actually lifting a burden on the individual artist, but also opens quite a bit for other ideas to come in. And sometimes maybe an unrealized project doesn't happen immediately, but the potential is for it to manifest itself in your mind for quite a while, and to take input from others, which is becoming more important than ever. I feel like a lot of public art projects and memorials are like a singular artist who make the thing, and that's a lot of times what happen. And I'm really happy that like Maria and Ariel are talking about more communal ways of bringing these things together. So it just opens up for more voices to come in over a longer period of time.
Ooh, look at that. Okay, I also, what you said really made me think about how it also just opens up the space for radical imagination. And I think so many people close that off. Okay, Maria, your minute starts now.
Perhaps there is something that is realized in the unrealized project. Perhaps having the idea expressed, having that pause of when it's still yet to manifest. Perhaps it hangs around as an idea that kind of injects energies to other projects that the artist is realizing, to other projects that are being realized. There's kind of that idea of potential, of something that could yet be transformed and could later be realized perhaps in a more potent way.
Thank you. So yesterday when we were discussing this conversation, one of the things that got brought up is all of the recent monuments that have been removed, right? And so the power of removing memorials, monuments, sort of the people as curator in a way. And so I'm wondering who you all ultimately believe should decide on a memorial for this tragedy. Maybe for this round, we will start with you, Derek.
I think, again, with the way things are going with technology and the ability for people to come together in ways that have never really happened before, we're going to find out very quickly how decisions about power and decisions about both removing and making new memorials happen. And I hope that this goes, I mean, like I definitely think and talked about the intangible memorials of communal experience and gatherings, but we're still going to have public art pieces that are run through the city, run through the government. And I really, those people still have power. And I feel like in a city like Denver, where I have a large public art program, they've been relinquishing some of that power a little bit, but I want them to do more. And I call on them to release that power even more.
Thank you. Okay, how about Maria next?
I think we conceive of curatorship or a curatorial practice as something that has the power to replicate, fight, transform the power of structures kind of its immediate context, and thus kind of help to identify kind of what needs our attention. I think this idea of people as curators, as mediators between artists and the way in which kind of messages will be delivered, transformed, proliferated in the digital age.
Thank you. Okay. All right. You're on deck.
Okay. Yeah, I think about the most dispossessed among us. I think about the folks who really their knowledges and their questions, folks who have been doing the work of disability justice for decades, who have been saying that the ways we've been working over the last year are possible, and look, they are. And I think about the intersections of all of that. I think about young people and their voices in this, and longer durational monument and memorial work, and how we can amplify and center their voices, because they'll really bridge the storytelling of this moment between what we have experienced and what the next world will be. So yeah, I think that's who we should be listening to.
Thank you. Okay, so I know we are almost at time. We only have a few minutes left. So one more short round, okay? And I know that people are going to stick around because this is riveting, and I can't wait to hear what you are all going to say to this. And it's actually very connected to what you just said, Ariel, because we're thinking about interconnectedness, or us in the system of interbeing. And something that we spoke to the other day, which I did not have the answer for, but I'm hoping that y'all do, which is memorial is harm reduction. I said those words, I'm like, I don't really know what that means, but I'm inclined to explore it. And I'm going to call in another example of a memorial and its negative impact environmentally on other species, right? The 9/11 memorial, beautiful tribute in light, kills thousands and thousands of migratory birds every year. And it's this beautiful tribute that does not acknowledge its impact environmentally on other beings. And so I'm just wondering, how could we imagine this COVID memorial as a form of harm reduction? Okay, so 1 minute on the clock. Do we have someone who wants to volunteer to go first for this one? Someone who's ready to speak to it? If not, I'm going to call. Okay, Maria, you're first.
I still don't have the question for that. And I think it's connected to the ethics of the medium, the ethics of the container, the ethics of the voices that we are highlighting, of having a sort of practice that creates that has kind of the ethics of memorializing, the ethics of the preservation of life.
Thank you. Who'd like to jump in next?
I'll go real quick. Okay. I think that this is a question that I think brings me back to the body. It brings me back to thinking about rehearsal as memorial, thinking about memorial practice rather than fixed material memorial in space. It brings me back to thinking about how I have felt so disembodied in the work of gathering with people, and that feels like an effort of repair that needs to happen. And so how can we be in our bodies with other species in the world in memorial? Yeah.
Thank you. All right. And then Derek.
just want to echo kind of what Ariel was saying, just about like being in your body. It's a very present moment. And as we're looking at memorials and as they're kind of coming down, a lot of memorials are brought down. That is a form of harm reduction, maybe through breaking down and obliterating systems. And also, yeah, I think that we're probably not going to be able to feel, some of those memorials are really old, some of them aren't that old and they're brought down. And I think that time will tell. And I think it's a lot of burden for us to think about this memorial project or any memorial as something that, and it's put on artists. And again, this almost like reiterating what I said last time, we have to put pressure on people who maybe have more power, if we're talking about power, to help us reduce that harm or take it ourselves. Yeah.
Thank you for that. Amazing what you can fit into a minute. I feel like all of you had just the most thought-provoking and rich ideas and responses to all of the questions this morning. And I want to thank you for sharing your voice and your time and your presence with us. There was so much more to get to, but I know we are at time. But I do want to do one small closing gesture as we leave. And, in part, talking about a memorial is to dance around. Oh my gosh, Ariel, when you said that grief is a barrier to entry, that really hit in a very deep way for me. And thinking about how to talk about this memorial feels like dancing around loss and pain and grief and death. And I want us to think for a moment, and I know that there are more of these than we can fit into one word, but what is a sort of ritual or missing aspect in your grieving process that you have felt in this time of social distance, something that has been a loss, that has been, something that you wish you'd had in these times. I will start, and for me, that is touch.
Yeah, it's touch. Yeah.
It's the same. It's that impossibility of comfort, of company, of looking into each other's eyes, holding each other, feeling each other's energy.
And Derek?
Tangible gathering of a community. Like both across the country and even very locally, even in my neighborhood, it's sometimes it's been tough to even get out and really connect with the people, close to me by proximity and far. That's definitely been it.
Well, I want to thank you all again for being in community with me and all of us this morning. And though we cannot be physically close, I truly am touched by your responses and your work on this project and all that you do in the world. So thank you for sharing that with us this morning.
Guys, so much. Thank you, Jen, for leading this conversation, and thank you for the amazing insights, Maria, Ariel, and Tarek, for really just being present and sharing your experiences in this space. It's been an honor to hold space with all of you this morning in the virtual setting. And thank you to Aisha for sharing her song at the beginning of this event. We do also just want to remind everyone that this is part of the America's COVID-19 Memorial, and anyone who would like to participate is invited to submit their own memorial artworks to our growing online gallery, which you can find at biennialtheamericas.org. And we have a couple more conversations with the artists of that project coming up over the next couple months. So we hope that you will come back and join us. And lastly, just a thank you to some of our partners and sponsors who made this event possible, to Reimagine for hosting the platform for registration for this event, and to Greenberg Traurig, who's provided financial support to make these possible. So Thank you guys all so much. I hope you have a lovely Friday afternoon and the rest of your weekend. And it's an honor to have had you here on this edition of our Coffee Chat conversation. Thank you very much. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.